TFO is a product that when they first came out, they were considered like an entry level kind of product. And then they had a gentleman get involved with them, and that gentleman's name was Lefty Cray.
Yep.
So
that's why I bought the reel.
Once Lefty got involved, I got involved. Lefty was our national treasure.
Correct.
He was there's very few people in life that you encounter that are even close to him in stature and knowledge and wisdom and experience. And Lefty was just fantastic. So my saying was, if it's good enough for Lefty, it's definitely going to be good enough for me. And their new Axiom 2 Series rods are top shelf.
That's what I have.
The blue one?
Yep.
Yep, that's got the recoil guides on it, which are the best guides out there. They don't look good. A lot of people kind of frown on them. Oh, that's just not that attractive. Right. Well, yeah, when you get halfway around the world and you pull your fly rod out of the tube, it's going to work.
Yeah.
You're not going to have
pretty good setup for a guy that doesn't know how to fly
It's
fish
a fantastic setup, and these little flies, this little Butler minnow. It's a little woolly mullet. It's fantastic with a little grizzly hackle in there. And just a bulletproof little fly. This here, I know this is like a Mike's Midnight Special. Mike Connor, who used to be a editor for Florida Sportsman Magazine. And these little Clousers, when Bob Clouser invented this fly, it's a home run. I mean, this has the little lead eyes. And, this fly, if you work it slow, it sinks. Everything in the ocean will eat this. Bonefish, dolphin, trout, snook, tarpon, everything will eat a Clouser minnow. You just can't go wrong with it. It's just, like I said, if I could fish just one fly, it'd be a Clouser, because I can get the whole water column. You just wait and let it sink. Now, and then tapered leaders are great. 10 good, but these two are good for bonefish, and this is good for, snook, but you're almost going to want to tie a shock tippet in, for a snook. But yeah, TFO, they make great products. Great little start. You got a good little starter kit here, dude. You're on your way.
Nice.
Get ready.
That's reassuring.
Get a bigger checkbook, because it gets expensive.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. I really enjoyed it.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to put him in my pocket, and I'm going to walk him over to the NICU, and we're going to throw him in like a clear box and like heat him up. Like that, just like that, she said. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm going through like the most traumatic point like in the history of my life here. And you're completely calm, and honestly that makes me feel better.
Right.
You know what I mean? So she like really like chilled me out like right off the bat. They know what they're doing.
Oh, those people are, my daughter's a ER nurse in Chicago.
Yeah.
And she just shifted to post-cardiac transplant ICU.
Oh, man.
They wheel them in the room and their heart's over here.
Right.
That kind of stuff, the tubes, and there's 30 drip bags, and she's walking with drip bags down the hall. And so those gals there, screw the doctor. The doctor knows what they're doing, but the nurses are who keeps it together.
They're the real heroes.
They really are.
I come from a whole family of nurses.
Yeah.
My oldest, I'm the youngest of 6. My oldest sister at one point was like the chief nursing officer at Florida Medical. And she's since like purposely downgraded her positions because you can only do that job for so long.
Yeah.
So now she basically runs a whole floor here at Coral Springs Medical. And to her, that's like an easy job, but she's running an entire floor.
Right.
But I don't know. And then I got like her daughter's a nurse, and like my sister's a nurse, my other sister's a nurse, my niece, like a couple of nieces that are nurses. The whole family's nurses, so we're in good hands in case anything happens. It's just like
my wife was an ER nurse. Marina's a nurse, and it's if someone gets a cut, it's lavaged, it's washed, it's antisepticized, it's antibiotic and band-aided. You're good. You'll be fine.
I can't remember the last time I went to like the hospital for an emergency or anything like that. It's like I just call my sister, she comes over and takes care of the whole thing. She brings her kit.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to Connected by Water, which is now officially Connected by Water, presented by Joey Accardi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Subaru. I got that right.
Far out.
Yeah, cool. We're here with Rufus Wakeman, the legend.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would. How are you? Thank you very much for coming down and visiting us today.
It's my pleasure. It's always enjoyable to do these. It's great to see you, and congratulations on your continued success. And
thank you, sir.
I can't wait to go see the bridge.
Yeah, no, you got to check it out while you're down
fantastic.
Here. Yeah,
Anytime you get a bridge, wow, I've made it. It's one of those things,
It's really it's still surreal to me.
Yeah.
And the coolest part about it wasn't like a call to artists. It wasn't like a sort of contest or anything like that.
Right.
I mean, they picked up the phone, they called me to say, hey, we want you to do this.
That's cool.
And to me, that was,
it's a huge compliment.
Yeah, and that's my stomping grounds. That's where I grew up fishing. That's where I grew up surfing and just, catching pompano off that beach and hitting that pier and just catching, and just really, a pier rat there.
That's
and
it,
just surfing Silver Thatch and 2nd Street. And I mean, in that whole marina right there, the first gallery I was ever in was right there at the foot of that bridge. I mean,
great history.
Yeah, it's really kind of like a full circle thing for us. So,
yeah. It's, I can't draw or create anything, but I can sure appreciate it.
Well, you're a big appreciator of art. We really appreciate how much you support all of us.
I love art. I love the people who can create it. It's just such a gift. It's such a gift to be able to see in that 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional sort of plane and be able to do that and create depth. And I've tried.
Yeah.
I could barely draw stick figures, It's just one of those things. That hemisphere of my brain just doesn't function.
People always ask me that. They're like, when did you start drawing? And I'm like, I don't ever remember a time not drawing. Being an artist, it's kind of, I always say this, it's what you are. It's not necessarily what you do. Yep. I think everyone needs to have that base, at least that foundation, that starting point.
Right.
Art can be taught. That's why art schools make millions of dollars every year. But in order for it to be taught, you need to have that basic understanding.
Well, the mind has an eye, the mind's eye.
Yeah.
And when that mind's eye sees what you want to put down, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
Like some people struggle with it, and they go to art school, and eventually after trial and tribulation, it happens. But then you have people such as yourself who just sit down and boom, 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 and there it is,
Yeah.
Oh, you want to see a sailfish? Oh, or you want to see a horse? Or, I have a dear friend of mine, Bill Elliott, who is, he was at one point the art director for the Bronx Zoo.
Okay.
And he has illustrated like 30-something books, and he's done, from pencils to watercolors to acrylics to oils. He's done the full gambit. I personally really like his pencils.
Mm-hmm.
They're just
I have to check 'em out.
So detailed. He's in his early 70s now, and age has taken its toll. He's got the shakes, if you will, and can't really put a pen to paper anymore. But he lives in North Carolina, and he's a fly fisherman. Oh, I can't even imagine. Bill he's a master fly caster, master fly tyer, master artist. And, he's kind of lost the art thing. So now he just piddles around the house and goes fishing whenever he can.
Yeah.
And
maybe he should get into like abstract art.
Oh, I'm sure he could achieve that. But, it's such an incredible, and, I know you, I know Guy Harvey, I know Carrie Chen, and I collect art by, John Hamburger, Stanley Meltzoff, Ron Digby, who is a gouache watercolor painter, paints raptors, birds of prey, and so forth, and he's had books done on him, and gosh, it's too many to even think of. But we can all agree Stanley Meltzoff's the hero.
Yeah,
Stanley was something.
He's kind of really what paved the way for us.
Yeah, exactly.
For guys like me, and he truly is. You try to define him in a word, and it's really so tough. There's just such an extensive body of work there. I kind of look at it as, points of inspiration for sure, but it was a gateway, that opened up.
Right.
And I know Don Ray would say the same thing.
Ray,
Don's a huge fan of Stanley.
Yeah,
he was actually friends with him.
Yeah.
And Don. That's almost kind of like a passing torch for me because, when I told you about that gallery, the Wildfish collection, that's when I first met Don when I was 17, a 17-year-old artist, and he's always been very much of a mentor
Yeah.
for
Don
me.
Ray's
so
work
it's
is
kind of like
fantastic.
passes along.
Right, him and Al Barnes and
the
lot
late
of
Al Barnes,
right,
Yep.
and gosh,
John
who was
Carroll
the Russ
Doyle.
Smiley and
John Carroll Doyle.
John
just
Carroll
recently
Doyle.
passed
Yep,
away.
he did really. I didn't know that.
I think about a year or two ago. Yeah.
I had one of the first pieces of art I ever had was one of his, where it was a marlin jumping in a stormy setting in a rough sea with a mahi flipped off its bill.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those paintings. I wish I still had it, but in a moment of alcohol-induced, what's
Emotion?
the word I'm looking for? Yeah, emotion, or I gave it to a friend of mine.
There you go. Sounds like you all need to be friends with Rufus.
Yeah, right. And it was like
And
really
have a drink
one of
with
the, or several. It's going to take several, but no, it's just, art is such a cool thing, and I love the marine art. I love some of the new stuff you see, some of the, the wood things, the driftwood sculptures.
Yeah.
And there's that guy, Nicholas Just, over in Africa, who does the aluminum things, which are just magnificent. And, of course, I'm a big bronze lover, Kent Ulberg, and, Bodo Muche, and
You
some of the other
remember
guys.
Pierre, Captain Pierre?
Pierre. I have one of his belt buckles.
Really? Yeah, he was a cool dude, man. I remember seeing him when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what really ever happened to him, but
I believe he's gone.
yeah,
I believe he
he
passed
was
a
an older
couple
guy
years ago,
when I knew him when I was 17. So that was
fantastic artist.
Yep. And it's amazing to see the path in this industry continue on.
Yeah.
From that respect too,
Right.
how it keeps evolving, keeps changing. I know we try to evolve here and we try to change here and think out of the box or whatever, just try new approaches and new things like the Stanleys and all those guys are doing great, and they're very well established in what they're doing. They have a great foothold on their lives and their careers as artists, so there's no worries there. But I think it's almost a responsibility of the next generation to evolve that and come up with things that are new, come up with things that are different, whether it's working with new mediums, whether it's working with new subject matters or different perspectives. And, you don't want to just sit there and stay in that lane and produce the same things that those guys did. I mean, first of all, it wouldn't be right to them, to try to just duplicate their body of work, but you also want to be unique in your own right.
Yeah, like have you seen the book, Stanley's book?
I haven't yet, actually.
My God.
Yeah, no, I heard.
It's pretty spectacular. Well, he actually started doing like manuals, like
Audubon stuff?
machinery manuals.
Oh, okay. Oh, I mean, that's how he started out in his career?
That, and I want to say sort of like a futuristic kind of space stuff, like Sputnik sort of, Lost in Space
Sci-fi
kind of sci-fi, And there's one of the greatest photographs of any underwater or any marine artist, period, is a picture of Stanley Meltzoff underwater with a scuba tank on and an easel. He's standing in it with an easel with no mask, so he can kind of sketch what he's seeing with the distortion.
The photo?
Yeah, it's a photograph of him underwater, sketching on an
pre-technology.
Easel. But that was it. A good friend of mine is Susanna Waterman, and her father is Stan Waterman. He's 97, 96. He is he's the videographer of my generation. He's the sort of the Jacques Cousteau of underwater videography. He created the first underwater housings, and back in the 50s, he did Blue Water, White Death with Peter Gimbel, and Stanley is just a wonderful, wonderful fella. I mean, I've had the pleasure of having dinner with him on occasion, and the Blue Wild, the big show that Sherry Day puts on down in Lauderdale. Stanley, for years, was the guest featured. He was the talent. And he came there one year, and Susanna, she would always accompany him. Because let's face it, he was in his 90s, late 80s and 90s, and she would sort of make sure that, he got up the stairs safely and got to all of his engagements and so forth. And he moved his family to Papeete Bay over in Tahiti for a year just so they could live in another culture.
Come on.
And it's what a bunch of photographs are so fantastic of Gar and Gordy and Susanna growing up, the three kids, with Watermans, and I mean some of the, he'd jump overboard with a box as big as a milk crate, with a camera in it, stuff like that, and everything was just starting, and it was just to to have know the people who have were the predecessors of all of this is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And I mean Stanley's his last dive I think was in either Roatan or Fiji. He was like 91 or 2. And there he is at the bottom before everybody, scurrying along and
diving at 91.
Wow. Yeah, and then finally he came to the surface and said, "That's it. I'm done." And because Susanna's husband, John Reed, is one of my dearest best friends, and John will be down at my house this week for Thanksgiving and with Susanna, and I've known John 40-something years, and they finally found each other. They grew up together and both had marriages, and then finally the stars brought them back together, and they've been together for about 12 or 13 or 14 years now, and it's great.
It's a good story.
It's just their life is a wonderful life and full of happiness and joy and fishing and traveling, and they have a big house in Maine. The parents, Stan and his wife, have a big house in Maine called the Punch Bowl.
Really?
Which is on sort of a body of water that is like a punch bowl. It's like a round body of water bay, and the house overlooks it. And I mean, I've never been there, but I can't wait to go.
Awesome. You mentioned about that thing with the exposed to different cultures. I mean, although you are set up with the River Palm Cottage, and you're pretty much a staple there in the Jensen Beach area. But you've traveled everywhere.
Pretty much, life has taken me to the four corners of the world, and from Africa to Australia to the Seychelles to Galapagos and Brazil and Argentina and Alaska. I haven't really fished Alaska properly, but I fished it. I've caught grayling and pike. I can't wait to catch big rainbow trout and salmon and stuff like that. But I'm saving that for later in life. Well, guess what? Later is here.
Later's here.
I mean, I'm only 57, but 67's right around the corner.
Yeah, I've been dying to go to Alaska and fish.
Yeah, it's Pat Ford is a really dear friend of mine. And
excellent, amazing photographer.
Oh God, he's fantastic. But he's just a great friend and good buddy. And the fact he takes a good picture helps too. But we've been good friends for 20 years, and I just think the world of Pat. I consider him one of my dearest best friends.
That's great.
And we've had the pleasure of fishing in the Seychelles and Africa and the Galapagos, and a lot of the places I've been is because Pat said, "Hey, you want to go here?" "Yeah, sure, I'll go."
Yeah,
and Pat's always been a real global angler, and it's. I'd move to Australia tomorrow if I could. The fishing's just that good there.
Yeah,
and
to Cairns.
No, I'd probably live somewhere south of Cairns, maybe in the Hinchinbrook area. And or maybe even in Hervey Bay, down around Fraser Island. It's you got flats fishing, you got the offshores right there.
I've never been, so
and Exmouth, Australia, on the west coast Exmouth is as far away from here as you can get without going the other way around the world. It's 12,500 miles. From here, and it's arguably the finest saltwater flats fishing, fly fishing destination on the planet.
Really?
You can catch black marlin, sailfish, striped marlin, blue marlin, maybe stripes and blues not on fly because they're a little further offshore and bigger. Blue marlin being up to 1,000 pounds there, but you don't get too many little ones. And most of the striped marlin there are well over 100 pounds. And you're not going to get a lot of shots. But the black marlin and the sailfish in 300 feet or less, 400 feet or less, you're going to see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 a day sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are good numbers.
And they're all under 100 pounds. The black marlin are under 100, 150 and smaller. So, I mean, I've caught a handful of them, and they're all 60, 70, 80, 90 pounds. So it's a great fly fishing fish. They get cobia. They get 2 species of permit, queenfish, 4 species of trevally, mackerel, bonefish.
Those GTs over there is a big thing, right?
The GTs are big. Well, the whole Indo-Pacific.
Yeah.
From Christmas Island, which is south of Hawaii, all the way to western or eastern Africa, which encompasses Australia, New Guinea, all the atolls in Micronesia, the Seychelles, the Andaman Islands, all of that is GT heaven.
Yeah.
And then, we're fortunate we have Jack Crevalle here in Florida. So I came up, I always say, well, everyone travels around the world to go catch a giant trevally. Well, you could just stay here in Florida and catch giant Jack Crevalle. And it's, I don't know. I think our Jacks fight just as hard as a GT does. They just don't get to 100 pounds.
Right. That's the thing.
And that's the thing.
They just don't get as big.
Yeah. No, if you catch a 40-pound Jack these days, an honest 40-pounder, which is about 50 inches, you've caught something really special.
Yeah.
You go back into 70s, and there was a lot more of them. The Palm Beach Inlet was loaded with them. Cynthia Boomhauer's got a bunch of records, and some of the, old-timey guys there in the Palm Beach Inlet, 40-pounders, 50-pounders. And I think the world record Jack is, I want to say about 60, and I want to say it comes from Western Africa.
Yeah.
Either Western, probably Western Africa, Angola, or Guinea-Bissau, or Sierra Leone, or someplace like that. But they get big ones over there.
You're a pioneer of the sport in a lot of respects, especially in the fly fishing aspect of it. Take me through a little bit of some of the things you've done on the billfish end with that.
Well, the billfish thing for me started in probably 86. I'd as a kid, I had seen a video of Bob Stearns on, I want to say, Wide World of Sports or American Sportsman, that old Kurt Gowdy show.
Yeah.
And they were in Panama or Costa Rica, and, Bob Stearns caught a sailfish or something, and then up comes a big, black marlin, and he throws the fly, and you see the fly popping through the water, and, the fish comes up and looks at it and turns off and never eats it. And it was like an indelible thing in my mind, I was thinking, wow, I really want to do that one day. And so, and then tarpon, I saw a video in the, someone shot a video. I want to say it was Stu Apt, and down in the Keys catching tarpon on a fly. Now, I had started fly fishing in Wyoming when I was about 9 years old. My mother would take me to a dude ranch out there, HF Bar Ranch, between Sheridan and Buffalo, in a little town called Saddle String, Wyoming. And there was a professor from the University of Maryland there, Mr. Professor Platt, and he had his two sons and his wife and his parents would come every summer. And this gentleman was into looking for arrowheads and into butterfly collection and all these cool things that I just naturally took to.
Right.
And he taught me how to tie flies. And I'll never forget sitting in his cabin, Garden Spot was the name of the cabin. HF Bar Ranch consists of around 50 or 55 cabins. And it was created by the Horton family in 1904. And it was incorporated in 1904. But it started out sort of as, well, hey, we got this piece of property and we built these cabins. And, hey, if you want to come here and build a cabin, you can hang out. So that's what happened. These families started going there and building these cabins. And they were all on the stream that ran through the property.
Fly fishing commune.
And, well, this is back in the early 1900s. So it's, kind of grew and so forth. And it's a dude ranch. So you go there to ride horses. And, that was one thing I actually did as a kid was I'd wake up, go eat mess go chow hall with all the wranglers and go out at 6 a.m. and wrangle the horses, 200 head of horses. And to this day, I was really probably still the only dude at the dude ranch to ever do that. I just wanted to be, part of the fun.
Yeah.
And I'd hang out with some of the, the wranglers where they kind of took me under their wing and, befriended me. Who's this little kid who's asking all the right questions? And yeah, he's not a bad little kid. He's kind of a pain in my ass, but you know what? We'll tolerate him.
Yeah.
And I'd polish some of the saddles and I'd hay the horses and, take the curry comb and groom some of the horses. And Dean Thomas was the head wrangler.
Right.
Who was a real good friend of my mother's and the owner, and he lived up behind Hank Horton's house. Hank was a she, and her name was Henrietta, but everybody called her Hank, and she was a crotchety old broad.
That's good stuff right there.
She was fantastic, and I'd hang out with Dean up at his cabin, and he was, so I learned a lot about adult stuff as a really young kid, being a young man, a young boy. in a world full of men out in Wyoming, you know, and horses and lassos and friggin', you know, steers and dirt and mud and you know, so I just, you know, rolling in the mud and throwing a rope
Clean
on
outdoor
it.
living.
Just great stuff, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, walking around for hours and hours bent over looking for arrowheads and stuff. And then Mr. Platt in the cabin garden spot. We lived in the cabin Meadowlark, which was right next door to it. And I learned how to tie flies. And I was probably 9 or 10, and I caught my first trout on a fly that I tied, and that was pretty much it for me. And then, you know, I went there till I was about 14. I'm from about maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe 5 or 6 years I went there, and just loved it, you know, at outdoor riding horses, and met a lot of great people. I mean, some of my friends from there, one of them is a brother and sister, Josh and Mary McLaughlin. Josh directed all the Wolverine movies. His grandfather was Victor McLaughlin, a big actor in Hollywood and producer and so forth, and director. And then Mary, his sister, she just did the last installment of the Planet of the Apes movie. You know, the War for the Planet? Yeah. And she did the hotel, you know, the Hotel Del Rey or whatever it was with Jeff Bridges. And, you know, it's kind of a macabre, dark, really strange movie, but really good and entertaining, you know. But that's, you know, like the people you meet at this ranch, you know, we're all movers and shakers and, you know, and, you know, riding horses with them and throwing rocks in the stream and you know, just good, like you said, just good, clean outdoor living, you know.
Yeah.
And so I started fly fishing at a pretty young age. And I saw these videos and, you know, well, one day I'll do that. You know, one day I'll throw a fly at a tarpon. One day I'll throw a fly at a billfish. So we went to Mexico, and I brought a fly rod and you know, 12 weight, just like a tarpon rod. And we caught a bunch of fish on ballyhoo. And I didn't throw the fly that year. And then in 87, I threw the fly and I caught a sailfish. And then in 88, I went to Africa and fished with Skip on the hooker and, you know, the Madam and the hooker, and hung out and set a world record there, a 12-pound tippet fly.
Really then, like, through that innovation of, like, you and Skip, like, I think primarily really, I mean, set in motion that entire fly fishing for billfish.
Well, it had been done prior. I mean, like,
but I mean, you really guys really started moving it forward.
I went to Billy Pate was sort of the guy who really, you know, Billy Pate caught the first blue marlin on fly. I can take credit for defeating Billy Pate's Pacific fly rod record on 8-pound tippet. You know, his was, I think, Bob Stearns had it, then Billy Pate beat him, and then I beat Billy Pate. And I knew Billy Pate. He was a wonderful Southern gentleman. I had dinner with him. We conversed. We fished on Homosassa together. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for Billy Pate and Bob Stearns and all these guys. Bob Stearns is one of the finest technicians, along the lines of a Larry Dahlberg kind of a technician. I'm going to take this lure and make it better. I'm going to put better split rings on it. I'm going to put better hooks on it. I'm going to weight the lure. I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to, you know, and that was Bob. And Bob was a real drag guy, really into drags and you know, using different oils to lubricate reels for maximum performance, stuff like that. That not only, you know, you buy it, you put it on a rod and you throw it, you know. Well, Bob would take it apart, degrease it, put it back together, and use, you know, like sewing oil, you know, stuff like that, sewing machine oil, and it would spin for a week and that whole 9 yards, and just, you know, taking it to the next level. Yeah, you know, but you know. So
you evolved with. I cut you off there. I didn't cut you off when you got the Skip there and the hooker.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Skip. Well, I was the first fly guy to get on the hooker.
Okay.
Probably the only one, and I fished in Africa, Dakar, Senegal. Then I fished him in Costa Rica. Basically, I met Skip. A mutual friend of ours introduced us. We had lunch at Singer Island at Sailfish Marina. And I met Skip, and I said, well, where are you going? You know, where's this whole thing going? He goes, well, we're in Ivory Coast, Africa now. And they had set some god-awful 680-pound blue marlin on 20-pound test. And, wow, that's impressive, you know, and all of that stuff. And I said, well, you know, are you going to Australia? And they go, yeah. And I go, well, I'll book 30 days in Australia. And he said, well, you got to fish this first somewhere else, you know.
Right.
You gotta ease into the program. So I'm okay, great. Where are you right here? Where are you going next month?
Right.
Dakar, Senegal. Okay,
I'm your
great.
Huckleberry, right?
I'll go.
Yeah.
So I went. Then I went to Costa Rica, and then that was in '89. I fished them in Costa Rica. So I guess it was that summer that I went to. They left Costa Rica. They went to Hawaii. I flew to Hawaii, got on the boat, and crossed to Cairns, Australia. 20 days at sea. But we went from Honokaha Harbor. I flew into Kona. We loaded the hooker that night. Loaded it I got in there late. I crashed, and the next morning woke up, got a hold of the guys, Scott Levin and Greg Mercurio, and we hooked up, and we loaded the hooker in Honokaha Harbor that evening, or maybe it was the next evening. I think it was the next evening, the second day I was there, and went to Honolulu, and we spent a week there. You know, we scratched some paint off the boat and repainted some stuff and reprovisioned the boat. And then, you know, it came time to fuel the boat. So we had to move the Madam over to some fuel dock, and you had to dismantle the master bedroom because the fuel vent was under the master bedroom bed. So, and I mean,
for those that are listening that don't understand what the Madam is, that was the flagship of the hooker that allowed it to travel all over the world.
It was a 110-foot converted oil rig tender, kind of a, you know, crew boat from Louisiana, swift ship crew boat. And Jerry Dunaway bought this thing for a song and a dance, and, you know, put about $1 million into it, and turned it into really a giant floating palace that pulled a 50-footer up on the back deck. And it was the El Zorro. The El Zorro was considered the first real mothership with a game boat on it. Then the hooker and the Madam came along, and then Jean-Paul built the French look, and Greg Norman built his Aussie rules and stuff. But no boat did what the Madam and the hooker did. She went around the world and set, 40, 50 world records and so forth for mostly billfish. And, Deborah Maddox had, at one time, Jerry Dunaway's wife had a royal billfish slam of all current world records. Now, that is arguably the greatest feat ever done by an angler, to have all 9 species of billfish,
right,
and all of them are current world records. So that's an incredible thing.
Neck breaking.
There's a Moroccan gentleman right now, Fouad Sayahoui, who's been throwing flies at billfish for years, and Fouad Sayahoui is only a few fish away from having that on fly. You know, I mean, I know he's got black marlin and white marlin and Atlantic sailfish, and he might have a spearfish record. He might have a stripe. I mean, he's only 2 or 3. He's got swordfish. He's only 2 or 3 away, maybe 3 or 4 away from having a royal billfish slam of current world records on fly.
Wow.
And that's going to be a hard one to beat,
That's
going to be a really hard one to beat.
That's time and dedication.
It's time and dedication.
Yeah, sure.
He's got plenty of money, and his boat lives in Cape Verde. So the blue marlins, the Atlantic blue marlins,
he's
a piece
in the right
of cake.
spot.
And, he's already got the 20, the 6, or he's got the 16 and the 12. And the 20, I know he's after it because Bill Buckland at Fisherman Center sent him some flying gaffs, flying gaffs, but straight gaffs, those titanium straight gaffs, which are, these things are carbon fiber handles and these titanium heads. I mean, the gaff weighs as much as this swordfish bill, and it's 8 feet long. It weighs nothing. They weigh like 2 pounds or 3 pounds,
Really?
Yeah. It's incredible.
Wow.
I mean, the gaff head's titanium. I mean, it weighs as much as it can,
Yeah.
That. I mean, it's nothing. And you can't bend it, and it's sharp as a needle. And the carbon fiber shaft, it's just, they're $1,000 gaffs.
Yeah.
Really,
I mean, the right equipment isn't cheap.
You get what you pay for.
And that's, I mean, that's relative to anything, for the most part. You want the best of the best, and you're going to have to pay for the best of the best.
Right. I mean, if you can afford it, go for it, But yeah, so anyway, the Madam and the hooker was 20 days at sea, and we got to Australia and, started fishing there. I think I caught 16. I caught 16 black marlin that year, and was Billfish Foundation's top tag angler for that for 1989 or whatever it was.
Gotcha.
And I mean,
you were like the first one to really do that, like in a complete year, though, wasn't it?
No, well, the fly fishing thing was I set out in 2015 to catch a billfish royal slam on fly, and no one had really tried it.
Right.
I got 8 of the 9, and I couldn't get the swordfish.
Yeah.
Now you have like Jeremy Blockaloo's in Kenya. He had the swordfish.
Mm-hmm.
Marty Arostegui had the swordfish, and those guys had probably never really thought of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of inspired them. Roy Croniker had a few of them on fly, and then he caught the swordfish off of Florida, and I had tried. And, Skip Smith had started trolling the planers with silooms, and there are a lot of people who have, tried since. But
it's very hard to bring them to the surface,
easy.
though,
Well, you're going to see 2 or 3 a night. I mean, 1 or 2, 2 or 3.
Yeah, but then they can convert that.
Then they got to get in and eat the fly.
Yeah.
I mean, I had 1 bite. I know that Roy Croniker's caught 2, and he's had several on.
Mm-hmm.
And, Roy's after the record.
God, that must have been heartbreaking.
Roy, it's just terrifying.
To actually get one on and then lose it?
Get one on and have the fly line get wrapped around the reel coming off the deck. I mean, switching billfish during the day is kind of difficult.
Right.
At night, it's like doing it by braille.
Yeah.
Just put a blindfold on it. It's, because you got to keep the boat dark. Swordfish are pretty light sensitive. They don't really want to run into daylight, so...
Yeah.
You got to kind of keep the boat dark. So the only light we had on was the galley light, which just cast enough of a glow that, I'm not going to fall.
Yeah.
There's a stair there, or there's a step, or there's something
need, like,
in my...
the military infrared vision or something like that.
Yeah, then that'd really throw me off. I'd probably fall over, But no, and so I'd like to think I inspired these guys to go do that.
Sure.
And I'm not, and I'll get my swordfish one day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I spent $20,000 trying to catch 1 fish. Screw it.
Right.
I got frustrated. I got pissed off. And I mean, I fished on April 11th. I fished that night. The 1 year I was out there trying,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I even tried to bump it more, and I went back to the Dominican Republic. You can shuffle your cards. You can shuffle the deck by going and catching your last fish again, your first fish last.
Okay.
So I had caught my blue marlin on April 11th. So the next.
So you just have to do it within 365 days.
65 days, right?
Okay.
So the next fish I caught was in September. I caught a blue marlin and a sailfish and a stripey. Nick Smith was kind enough to invite me and take me to Costa Rica to go fad fishing with him, and I caught 3 of the 9 species in 2 days, down there on those fads offshore Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to get to September, then now I got to go catch that first fish again.
Right.
So I went and caught it, and I caught it in May. So I had gone from April, then I went a full year and caught the fish again in May. So now I had till September to May. You see, you can shuffle the deck.
Gotcha,
so you see,
yep.
So I went and I caught the Atlantic blue marlin again, and then I went sword fishing 4 nights that summer, and you can't do it in the summer. There's too much lightning.
Yeah, that's tough.
Swordfish are once again, the strobes are going off, the lightning, swordfish ain't going to come up.
Probably this time of year would be
right
better.
now, right?
Yeah,
October, November is a really good time.
Yeah.
So, and we actually went, I fished with VJ Bell on the Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That's who I got the bite with. I fished with Bouncer. I fished 2 nights with Bouncer, and it was just a strobe show, just lightning constantly. And we never got a bite.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went with VJ. We had 1 night of just nothing but lightning. And then the next night we had lightning until about 11 or 12 o'clock. We had a lull till about 2. And we got a bite at like 1 and another bite at like 2 or 2:15.
Right.
And none of them would tease in.
Right.
And then at like 2:30, boom, there's another strobe show. And we fished till 4:30 and we never got another bite.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, yes, lightning is the kiss of death. And so is west wind.
West wind.
That's always, if the wind out of the west and
wind's
just
the devil.
Right, don't go sword fishing. So, I got frustrated and just kind of hung it up and figured, screw it, I'll get it one day. And, one day's rolling up here.
Well, if I have confidence in anyone on this planet to achieve that, it's you.
We'll go
that's
get
for
it.
Sure.
I mean, but I'm not going to do the year thing because that gets expensive, and you start chasing. I had to go back to Australia. I had to go back to Hawaii. I had to go back to Mexico.
Wow.
So when you start talking about going back to places, there's another 10 grand. There's another 10 grand. There's another 10. I mean, it's all 10 grand. That's how it is. It's not cheap. I get a buddy of mine, my good dear friend Scott Loper, with Donkey. I'm Shrek, he's Donkey. For all you Facebook fans out there, you've seen us as Shrek and Donkey on another whirlwind adventure, And Scott and I grew up. Our first fishing trip together was, I went up to Lake of the Woods, Ontario in like 85 or 86 or something. And I called Scott, I'll call him Booty because his nickname's Bootman. Mm-hmm. And I gave Booty a call and I said, we were all into bass fishing then. And I said, look, man, you got to come up here. This is really cool. I'll pick you up in International Falls. It's about a 2-hour drive for me to get there. But if you can get your ass to International Falls, I'll pick you up, bring some rods. And I had trailered my little 17-whaler up there, and we're staying at.
God, I love the 17-whaler. Yep. We always give shout-outs to the 17-whaler in this
17-whaler, man, great boat. I still have it. I still have the boat. I've had it for 30-something years.
Yep.
Yeah, it was probably 86 or 87. Yeah, 86. And I said, meet me at International Falls. And, we're living on Young's Wilderness Camp, which is an island on a lodge. It's sort of like a peninsula, but it's almost.
Where is this?
Young in Lake of the Woods, Ontario.
Ontario, okay.
Up in this lake is just insane. It's all literally cut by glaciers.
Yeah.
Back in the Precambrian period, these glaciers carved these big giant walls of rocks out, Ice is strong when it wants to be.
Sure is.
And it just cut, it's like a 500-foot vertical cliff right down into the water, and we would troll, creek chubs in front of it and get stomped by northern pike and stuff, and it was just so cool.
Yeah.
But we're fishing Sabaskong Bay, this weedy bay, and you'd watch mink run along the shoreline, or beavers and bald eagles and, come on, loons, and real on Golden Pond stuff, and it was just fantastic. That was our first fishing trip. Then we went to St. Thomas together, and then did this, did that, went to the Keys a bunch, and St. Thomas. Then we went to Mexico. God, we went to Mexico like 4 or 5 years to Isla Mujeres and caught sailfish and white marlin and stuff like that, and big dolphin. And, I got lucky and caught a world record big dolphin down there. It's stood for 30 years.
Wow.
53 and a half pounds on 15-pound fly.
I'm just enamored listening to all of this. I
it's
really
great
am.
stuff.
This is, you've forgotten more fishing and more adventures than most people will ever even get close to sniffing.
It's been a blessed life, it's
and you grew up here in South Florida.
I was born and raised in Palm Beach.
Born and raised in Palm Beach.
Born at Good Samaritan Hospital and grew up on the island and
all over the world. But this is home.
I'll tell you, man, the fishing here in Stewart, Jensen Beach, until they destroyed the Indian River Lagoon, which is now making a slow comeback.
Right, and that's kind of what I wanted to segue to.
Oh God, man, it's I got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I know you do.
But it's arguably some of the best fishing on the planet. I got sailfish, dolphin, kingfish, cobia, wahoo, grouper, snappers, pompano, permit, tarpon, bonefish, sort of. We don't sight cast them, but we catch them. Speckled trout, redfish, the best snook fishery on the planet. Mm-hmm. So we've got big jacks. We got such a plethora of species, and it's all you can fly fish for. Like, look at Scott Hamilton out of Palm Beach.
Right.
Scott Hamilton, when he started his career, he said, I'm going to fish nothing but a fly rod. And I'm like, wow, that's ambitious. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God, it's 25, 30 years later, and he has totally achieved that. Mm-hmm. And he's known around the world as, you want to go catch fish on fly out of Palm Beach, you give Scott Hamilton a call.
Right.
Sharks, jacks, dolphin, tuna, bonitas, little tunnies, albies.
Which are fun. They're just not good eating. Man. It's just such a good little fighting fish.
Yeah, well, you can eat anything,
You can, yeah, all right. I guess I should repeat that.
Ready? Thank God we don't eat them because there wouldn't be any left.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's unfortunately, that's our cross to bear is
George was in here not too long ago. I mean, George is a regular at the studio, and he was we brought up Google Maps, and he was kind of pointing out some parts of the St. Lucie Inlet.
Yeah.
That he's like, see this was all grass bed.
Yeah.
Now it's all sand. And
right.
And he was like he was showing me all the different parts. He's like, we're working on it. Right. And you said something earlier when you were talking about Wyoming. I thought was kind of funny when you said you were just being an annoying little kid, but asking all the right questions.
Right.
Because you're not really, you can only be so annoying when you're asking the right questions.
Exactly.
And when you're asking the wrong questions, you're really annoying. Right. But it's almost like you've taken that attitude to what the fight is right now.
Oh,
right? You're asking all the right questions.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, so you've been to the Hill. Right,
I've been to Capitol.
Right?
I've been up to Tallahassee 3 times, before the Senate subcommittee. And, in front of Jack Latvala and Bradley and their bunch of people discussing, this is a problem it's nothing that, anyone really started by purpose or anything. It's just man's problem is that we're going to progress. We started out as some ape that grabbed and chipped stone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And so then we, made a tool, and we got a bow and arrow, and then we got a wheel, and then we made fire, and all these things have happened. And however rudimentary it seems, it's progress. It's progress. It's progress. It's progress. Well, we're going to progress ourselves right out of a planet if we're not careful,
Yeah, agreed.
And, we've got too many people. That's why Australia is so appealing to me. Mm-hmm. 25, 30 million people on a continent and are a really big island, and we got that in Florida now. We got 24 million people in Florida.
That's what I tried to explain to people.
Right.
I mean, and I want to get back to this real quick, but I just want to say this one thing since you brought that up.
Yep.
Is when a lot of these people were talking about, especially when we had the shooting here in Parkland.
Right.
About the gun control and blah, 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 and like all the things that we need to do as Americans. It's like, well, listen, there's over 300 million people in this country, right? And they're trying to give us Australia stats.
Right.
You're talking about a land that's huge and wide open, and there's as many people living in that entire country as there are in the state of Florida.
Exactly.
Right, so you cannot compare the two.
No, you can't compare the two. And I mean, long live the Second Amendment. I'm a big gun proponent, and I've got a handful of them, and I love to shoot birds, and I shoot a hog every now and then. I've not shot a deer, and I'm not really. Yeah, I'd like to go shoot an elk one day, but I don't want to walk real far to do it, I'll ride a horse maybe.
Right. Yeah, you got to be real quiet so there's no ATV there.
It's too much, It's, but I mean, our problem is we have a people problem. We have a progress, we have a people problem, we have a money problem, a greed problem. There's a lot of issues. I mean, they're gonna fill in 100 and something acres up south of Palm Bay now.
You posted that yesterday.
Yeah, they're gonna fill it in and build 3,500 homes. I mean, come on.
Can't we as a state do something? I mean, they wanted. All right. So this is what I'm glad you brought that up because I saw you post that yesterday, and I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Because they want to do eminent domain, like the whole concept of eminent domain. Can't we do eminent domain to conserve?
You would think so, but I mean, this is marsh wetland that is.
They're going to fill it in like Dubai, right?
They're going to fill it in, and then they're going to leave a little bit here and a little bit there, and they're going to mitigate something else down the road. But this is an entire ecosystem.
Correct.
That is there. It's been there.
How is that not
since
protected?
The beginning of time.
How's that not an extension of the Everglades?
It is, but I mean, it's 100. Well, everything south of Orlando used to be the Everglades.
Correct.
And I mean, there's a lot of nothing between Orlando and the North Shores of Lake Okeechobee. There's a lot of nothing.
Right.
And there's a lot of cattle and there's a lot of open space. And, the issue is that when they hardened up the Kissimmee and made the Kissimmee flow faster, and they got rid of the winding old Kissimmee River, which they have now reinstated to the tune of billions of dollars. They've created a meandering Kissimmee River again to aid in the effort to stop the massive influx of water into Lake Okeechobee. You got all the cattle fields up there. You got all the pollution. You got Orlando. I think when Walt Disney originally wanted Orlando to be Disney World, no one saw what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was tough to forecast that.
I say this. There's a few cities in the world that belong to the world, and Orlando's one of them because of Mickey Mouse.
You know, I mean, there are people that come from all over the world to see a rat, you know,
right,
and Mickey Mouse, and to hear the song "It's a Small World After All." And New York City is one. Maybe Hollywood, Los Angeles is one. Paris might be one, although I have no desire to go to Paris, you know. And so basically there's those cities that are in America that sort of belong to the world.
right.
And I mean, no one saw Orlando becoming the urban sprawl that it's become. And no one, you know, saw the future. No one, after the hurricane of '28, when the Lake Okeechobee flowed its banks and 2,000 people died, and in the '30s they created the Herbert Hoover Dike, no one saw the future. They created the Everglades agricultural area for some pole beans and tomatoes and lettuce, and then sugar comes in, and you know, the next thing you know, you got mechanized farming out there, and they burn the fields and burn this, and you know, and then sugar becomes this political powerhouse with massive amounts of money.
I watched that Rotten on Netflix. With the episode on that. I mean, George was telling me that you know the Fun Jewels and everything like that.
I grew up with them, and basically, I'll say this: they're great people. I've flown in their jets. I have been to their homes. I have fished for them. I've made it in their cockpits. I have spent time. I've had laughter and joy and fun. And I went to their birthday parties when I was in 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th, 8th grades. And Alfonso Esqueda and Andres Van Hool and Alex Van Hool and Norberto and Jesse, they're all great. And Lillian and you know, they're all wonderful people. But their business sucks. I mean, sugar is, you know, it's bad. It's bad for us. Business. And, you know, and if you want to go back in time and talk in the early 60s when sugar went to the FDA and sugar wasn't the enemy anymore, not that it's ever really been the enemy until recently, we really figured it out.
Well, with the lobby.
The sugar lobby
up in
huge.
Tallahassee. I mean, they got more
Washington,
lobbyists for sugar in Tallahassee than any other industry, don't they?
When the Everglades Foundation,
like 50 or 80 lobbyists
it's
or
more
something
than
like
that.
that.
It's over 100.
I mean, you got that many lobbyists up in Tallahassee just for one industry.
We got
that
flown,
only a couple of companies control.
Right. We got flown up to Tallahassee in a Learjet by the Everglades Foundation or Everglades Trust or whatever. We got picked myself up and Patrick Stracuzzi, who's a realtor in Stewart, Blair Wickstrom and a couple other people. I just can't remember who it is right now. But we went
water kind of thing.
Well, they were on one of them might have been there. Dan might have been there. But anyway, we got flown up there and we met with their lawyers, and the lawyers said they have 100 lobbyists here and they've got 150 ancillary people just who are working. He goes, I cannot go out on this town on a Friday night and not run into at least 6 of their people. And their people are talking to the right people at the right time about the right stuff in a social way. So come Monday, it's on.
It's done.
You know, it's on. I mean, it's. And I mean, my mother called them.
How do you fight that? You can't fight that.
You can't.
Anyone who's ever worked in business knows that that's where things happen.
Right here, Facebook and cell phones has created an awareness that would never be. Social media has allowed us to communicate this message.
Yeah, we've said that before too. Like without all those pictures and everything that everyone was sharing, and people wouldn't realize the gravity of the problem.
And so now our next issue is the spraying deal. This Roundup, this glyphosate that they're spraying for the control of the aquatic vegetation.
Yeah.
Recently there was a bass tournament somewhere, and every bass has tumors and lesions and all this stuff. And now they're saying send all this stuff to DeSantis' office, and hey, Ron's actually done some good work. You know,
so I wanted to ask you about that because I'm a big fan of DeSantis.
Me too.
Right?
I mean,
and I think he's doing a great job. And I think his first thing when he did was clean out the water council.
Water management,
first thing he did,
great stuff.
But I mean, you probably would know more than most, really, how good of a job he's doing. So I wanted to get your opinion.
I mean, by cleaning up. The South Florida Water Management District was a huge thing. Then he just signed this reservoir the other day that they're going to start. other than that, I kind of don't. I kind of stayed out. I just got burnt out on it.
Because we don't get too much into politics here on the show. It's not our thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when it comes to water, that's the only thing we really like
connected
get about.
by water, you know? And I mean, Florida has, it's a subtle beauty that we have here. It's not the Grand Canyon. It's not Monument Valley. It's not the Tetons. It's not Yellowstone. We don't have grizzly bears and elks and deer and bison and all these beautiful animals. Our spokes animal is a dinosaur that eats people.
Right.
You know, if that dinosaur had a fluffy nose and floppy ears, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. But an alligator is not a great spokes animal.
That's true.
It's not. It puts the fear of God in people. So a good alligator is a dead alligator to a lot of people. And that's just the way I get it. I get it, you know?
It's tough to have mercy for an animal like that because
really
they're ruthless.
is. I mean, it's a devastating
But in the same
creature.
respect, if you look at a grizzly bear, they're trying to protect all these grizzly
Well,
bears are no better. They're probably even worse.
Just as fast, you know?
They're even worse.
Right, but you know, it's
but they're cute and fluffy, and we want to make cartoons out of them and everything like that. Yeah,
little baby, right? Yogi Bear, you know, blah blah blah, and but yeah, it's you know, and you know, the Everglades. To a lot of people, it's not a beautiful national park. Mm-hmm. It's a subtle.
To me, it is.
I mean, to me too. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like the morning sun or the setting sun
down in Flamingo or like that.
God,
I mean,
it's just
God's country.
I
down
just
there.
want to get on my hands and knees and just salute it and you know, pray and please keep it the way it is. But you know, it's also Florida's a developer's dream. It's flat, it's hot. Soon and fishing has very little bearing on it, especially inshore fish. Right. You know, trout, snook, redfish, stuff like that. You know, we don't really need them.
It's not really the moneymaker
that offshore fishing is. We need more golf courses.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, Florida it's going to become warm weather and golf. Mm-hmm. That's it. You know, I mean, that's it.
Well, down here in Broward and Dade, they're actually starting to build on top of the golf courses. They're getting rid of the golf courses because there's nowhere. We're such a skinny plot of land down here that there's like they're like, oh, that's prime real estate for us. And how much are you making per golfer?
Hey, who said that? What movie was that statement?
What was
Two biggest waste of real estate?
Was that Caddyshack?
Golf courses and cemeteries. Hey, me and Wang, we're gonna buy the dump. You know? Hats off to you, Rodney.
Yeah.
No, it's and it's true. You know, I mean, golf courses and cemeteries. You know, you don't need to be left behind here. Just I'm going to get burnt and throw in the sea.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And everyone's going to say some words. I'm going to leave some money and they're going to have a party. It's going to be great. You know,
that's a pretty good outlook you got there on your demise there, Rufus.
Years ago, a dear friend of my mother's did this. His name was Walter Shirley, and Walter was a groovy cat. And, I mean, he was a happening cat. I'll never forget Walter. Mm-hmm. I was just a little kid, you know. So Walter up and dies, and he leaves $10,000. And in his will, he said, here's $10,000. It's going to go sit in the bank. And on this day, it shall be removed by this person. And there will be a party at Club 21 in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Now, my mom went, and she said, man, I had such mixed feelings about it. For one, it was 10 years.
Right.
Who's still alive? Who are we going to know? And she came away, and I spoke to her, and she said, you know, it was a blast.
Yeah.
I saw people I hadn't seen in 10 years. Saw people I hadn't seen in, 5 years and 20 years. You know, just everybody showed up. Mm-hmm. And it was a really good thing that Walter did by really doing this.
That's really cool.
And it was cool. And so I'm going to do that.
Well, at the end of the day, like everything you've done in your life, everything you've done as a fisherman and as an angler, as a conservationist, I mean, really would have no point if it wasn't for the friends you made along the way.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's really what the basis of this show is all about, with the whole Connected by Water. It's like, we can build a life around this industry.
It is.
But it's really all about the friends you make along the way and the celebration of that.
I've been so fortunate to, I've got so many friends and I love all of them. And even if I hadn't seen you in a while, I still think of you or this or that, or look forward to seeing you again. And it's all about, Flip Pallett said that. Flip said, someone asked him once about, what do you get out of fishing? And Flip said relationships. And I get it. But if you go deeper, and I spoke to Flip about this, and he even agreed, because his was a relationship statement on the surface. But I ran into him at the IGFA one night, and I started saying, well, yeah, it's a relationship, you and your friends, but it's also relationships with your tackle. I know how my knots are tied. I know how my rod throws. It's a relationship with your environment. It's a relationship with your boat. You know that when you turn at this speed, your boat's going to do this. There's so much more that goes into it than just your buddies. Granted, your buddies, you're high-fiving, you're laughing, you're catching fish, but it's the environment, it's nature, it's, how you conduct yourself in your relationship with everything around you. And it's really a wonderful thing. Being on the water is, for one, it's not to be taken lightly. You have to be on top of your game at
Correct.
all times.
Yep.
There are no seat belts, I mean, you better know your
attention.
stuff and pay attention. That is, I tell kids these days, and pay attention. Pay attention to everything. Pay attention. Just pay attention. Don't get slack-assed. Pay attention to your surroundings. When you walk up to the ATM, pay attention. Look around you. It just takes a second. Don't leave stuff. My son had his surfboard stolen last night or yesterday because he leaves it in the back of his pickup. And I told him, don't do that. It's gonna get yanked.
Yeah, it's not the movies.
Right, and it got yanked. And he called me this morning. I was gonna wake up and go take pictures of him surfing because the swell is epic.
Yeah, it's
and
big right now.
he calls me just so pissed off that his board was stolen. And I told him, I said, you didn't pay attention. And it's just that simple. Pay attention.
Yeah, you can be mad. You can be as mad as to the culprit as much as you want, but it's not going to
bring it back.
Yeah,
and I mean, he works on a '73 Jim Smith up in Stewart, and he was schlepping around on the boat yesterday and parked his truck at Allied. I said, they got cameras. Go look at the cameras. Go talk to the guy, and look. And you're going to see someone lift that board out of the back of your truck, most likely, or it could have been stolen at the beach. But most likely, don't leave stuff in the back of your truck,
Yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, I got his camper shell on my truck because I just got nervous. I was going to New Orleans, so I put a camper shell on the back of my truck,
I got to tell you, I got goosebumps when you with the whole thing you went through about relationships and the things how you took Philip's comment to another level because, we always try to define connected by water here.
Right.
And it's like this constant kind of evolve, just like water is. It's like a flowing stream, just really trying to pick apart this concept of what the whole connected by water theory is. And we try to put it in words, and we got a little blurb on it on our site and stuff like that. But I always enjoy when someone like you comes in and gives their perspective on it because you're so right.
Yeah,
I mean, the relationship goes another level beyond.
It goes levels and levels. Yeah,
and it's so because whenever I hear something that's really refreshing and new with the concept. It just really hits me home, and that was really great to hear you say that for sure.
Yeah, I mean the weather, your equipment, your buddies, your boat, your trailer, your truck. I mean there's all that. It's all fishing related. I know that my knots are good. I know I spooled my line right. I this and all that. That's all relationships that you have.
Just a history,
you just
and you remember like decades before when you caught a fish in that same spot in that moment you had.
And it's all. History repeating itself and paying attention. Like you talk to people and Steve Huff, he's like the best guide on the planet, and any guide that says anything else, although Jared Raskob's coming on pretty strong, But I mean, Steve Huff for years was regarded as, and still is, as, and I'll never forget the first time I met him. But he is just one of those guys who's constantly paying attention. And, he remembers that this flat on this moon, 5 years, blah, blah, and this tide, and he goes there, and sure enough, there they are. I met Steve Huff in a Stouts restaurant in Marathon. I was fishing with Mike Hewlett. And we pull in there at, 6:30 in the morning to have breakfast, and there's Steve and his client. His client had driven down from Miami, flew in from New York, driven down from Miami the night before. Now, this guy's wearing a unbuttoned Oxford shirt, sitting at a restaurant, with like two buttons tied together. He's got a pair of like loafers on. Not boat shoe loafers, but like penny loafers, you know.
Yeah.
And he's
like
balding,
yuppie, right?
But he's a balding 50-year-old guy or whatever, and I'm like 28 or 20. I'm still a kid, and 27 or 6 or something, And Mike goes, well, Rufus, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Huff, and blah, blah. And, hey, well, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. And the angler, whoever the angler was, pleasure to meet you. And we sit down and scarf down our eggs and hit the road. And the next day we go back, and there's Steve and this gentleman. And, hey, well, how'd you guys do? Well, we had like 4 tarpon, 3 permit, and 6 bonefish. And I'm like,
good day.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, how? Know? And then Mike kind of kicks me under the table and goes, it's shit. That's Steve.
Right.
And I'm like, so Mike, he's a guy too? Hey, what's your number, Steve? And I mean, we had a great day. I think I caught 2 permit and a bonefish, or 2 permit and 2 bonefish.
Yeah, you'll go home happy with that.
Oh my God, I was ecstatic, you know? And it's just, Mike explained to me later, he goes, Steve probably showed that guy more fish, and he probably ran further than anybody in history to find him. But that's how he is. And it's all, part of it. History repeating itself. He knew that on that flat at that tide, because he's paying attention,
one of the things I love most about this show is I get to bring on guys like you that just know way more about fishing than I ever will, probably, just because my craft is different,
Yeah, well, I can't paint a sailfish, especially not that good.
Well, I was going to say,
I can't even paint a stick figure sailfish,
Those stories that you're telling me, like I look at my brushes the same way. And I look at my old palettes the same way. So I can look at a palette sometimes, like, because I keep like a lot of my paper palettes.
Right,
and sometimes I could tell you the painting I painted on that, just based upon like the local color.
That's
of it
so cool. Is badger still a good thing?
What's that?
In the world of brushes, badger?
Well, I mean,
or has it gone to synthetics?
Well, a lot of it is synthetics.
Like China bristles or stuff like that?
A lot of it's synthetics. They have hybrids now.
Yeah.
I always like, the boar's tails and stuff like that.
Okay, boar's tail. Wow.
But there's so many companies now making them. I like to go to this Jerry's Artorama out in Deerfield Beach. It's really the best spot for brushes around.
Cool.
Other than buying them online, but when it comes to a brush, I like to touch and feel it. I gotta see and I gotta tell. It's kind of like with a fly.
You gotta have that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta touch and feel, and I can look at 7 of the same brush. That's like, Winsor and Newton #5, you know what I mean? And whatever. And I'm like looking at that.
It sounds like Chinese arithmetic to me,
And they'll all be different.
Wow.
But it's coming off a manufactured line, but there's still a relationship with, you're talking about hairs and bristles and everything like that. And they got to flow right and they got to pinch right, and things like that. And I'll just inspect like all 7 of them, like, yep, that one.
That's the one, yeah.
That's
so cool.
And sometimes I got brushes in there I've had since I was like 14 years old.
Right.
That's so cool. I name them.
Right.
Because
come on, Fred,
because I know exactly what that one brush does for that one thing, and I know that it's going to get that edge just right. And,
that's so cool.
So it's like, they tell stories, and
yes, they do.
I want to go back really quick just before we wrap this up to water in the state of Florida.
Yeah,
right, because we love our state of Florida.
Yes, we do.
We're both Florida natives. We want to take care of our backyard here, and we want people to be responsible. And we want people to pay attention. More importantly than anything else. There's obviously a swath of land that we'd like to have opened up. Hopefully that happens one day. I think that'll solve a lot of problems. I had Jeff in the studio, Jeff Maggio, Lunker Dog, in the studio yesterday. We were having a conversation about he thinks that we should put a no vacancy sign up in the front door of Florida.
Absolutely.
And you can't let we can't do this anymore.
I get it.
Because we think sprawl,
it's coming.
It's really just the impervious surfaces and everything kind of creeping into the center of the state really is the biggest problem of all of it. But I think sugar is number 1, but the sprawl is a very close number 2 is the way I kind of see it.
Yeah.
What in your mind ideally needs to happen? I mean, we talk about no vacancy or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
That's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
But, the thing is that responsible construction, responsible ecological style, and, some, more brick pavers, not concrete.
Right.
More permeable surface, but we got to stop the number of people. I mean, it's just, you look at Broward County, it's built out. You can't go any further west. It's over.
Right.
So, like you say, golf courses are falling.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it. That's what's going to happen. You know, soon it's going to be golf courses are going to, there's, 200 acres. That's 5,000 homes. Boom. That's more tax base. That's more, I mean, it's the bottom line is people management.
People management.
We have to manage the number of people that come here. I heard someone told me, I don't know how true it is, that last year it was almost 2 million people moved into Florida. Now, it used to be 1 million.
Yeah.
Like 1 million people would come a year.
Then
1 million people would die.
The net increase was 2 million?
I don't know, and I'm not sure that that's even true.
Right.
But I know that 700,000 people left California and 700,000 or 800,000 people left New York.
Yeah.
And several 100,000 people leaving New Jersey. So there's a lot of people
they
moving.
got some harebrained schemes.
They got some stuff going on up there that's hopefully never comes here. But I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. We've got to
keep
stop
fighting the good fight.
We just got to. I mean, the Mosquito Lagoon is dead. The
do
South,
you think that's ever going to come back?
I don't know, because they don't have a way to flush it.
There's no way to flush it, right?
Right. There's no way to flush it. There's no real inlet there. You get up to Scottsmore, anything north of, like Cocoa, there's no inlet up there really, except Canaveral or whatever it is. But that's, that's like limited in its access. I mean, the Banana River is all dead or dying. The Northern Indian River Lagoon, Scottsmore has no tide. It's just rainwater, dictates the rise and fall up there.
Right.
And if the salinity gets high, you get an algae bloom and boom, everything dies. And now down by us, it's the Lake Okeechobee waterway.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's why years ago, the CCA, a lot of people are pissed off at the Coastal Conservation Association, and we lost a lot of local support because they wouldn't sign the Now or Neverglades Declaration, and they wouldn't get involved, basically because it's not their mission statement. It never was. It never has been. They are now getting involved a little bit, and they have Coach DeSantis, and they were involved. They've always been in the background regarding the water. I mean, I remember 15 years ago trying to get Scott Nichols, who was my regional director. Scott, come on, we got to do something about the water. We got to do something about the water. And they never took a stance on it. And then finally, CEO Brian Gorski got a hold of me and said, "Look, I hear you're really concerned with this." And I go, "Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm your Martin County chapter president.
Right.
We are the exhaust pipe from Lake Okeechobee. Right, goes right down my river, the St. Lucie. I live on the St. Lucie. My fish camp's on the Indian River. You guys hold your inter-chapter challenge here. We have banquets here every year, and I'm losing support by droves.
Yeah.
Locally, I lost the Stewart Rod and Reel Club, the Stewart Fly Rodders. I lost every guide. I used to get a half-day trip out of every guide for our auction to donate, to couple it with, we'd take like Captain so-and-so and Captain so-and-so and put them together, and then I'd donate 2-night, 3-day stay at the fish camp. And we'd send it to Tampa or send it to Naples or send it to Polk County or Manatee County or friggin', Destin or whatever, to get people to come down and do this. Or I'd throw in a third day and give them a 3-night, 4-day stay and hook up 2 or 3 guides and, did all this stuff. And then, boom, I lose all the support.
Right.
And it became very frustrating. So Gorski called me and said, "Look, here's the deal. We're not a water advocacy group. We have a mission statement. We are a fisheries management group and a fishermen's rights and access group. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. We can't change mid-stride. We also can't afford it. How do we fight it? How do we operate?
That's the thing a lot of people don't see. This is a very expensive fight. Very expensive fight.
I mean, Paul Tudor Jones has put
lawyers alone
$40 million of his own money into it, and I think he's got an STA named after him.
God,
wow. I mean, you can't fight. This is big.
Yeah.
Sugar, the lobby, they're like the lawyer said, they got all the right people in all the right places. They had Clinton in their pocket, they had Bush in their pocket,
Right.
they got Trump. They probably have Trump in their pocket.
Well,
I don't know.
They alluded to that in that whole
Yeah,
Rotten
right.
documentary that they're breaking the Lewinsky thing, and then all of a sudden, there was a little bit of a.
Well, Alfie Von
the
Hool.
door closed in the Oval Office, and then everything changed.
Monica's, unzipping the presidential fly, and the phone rings,
Yeah.
and it's Alfie Von Hool.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. How do you beat that?
yeah,
I mean, they're going right to El Jefe with a phone call.
right.
It's insane. And that was in Time magazine.
I always say that I really, really, really hope that Ron DeSantis becomes president one day. I think he's got the tools for it.
He does,
but I just hope that this situation doesn't overwhelm him, because I think this is probably like the one thing.
Well, this is
that
his
might
test.
this is the test that's going to really affect that.
And I mean, our country is so divided right now. It's insane. I mean, I don't know what the future has. It is. I mean, I've been a lifelong conservative. I bend on a lot of issues. Fiscal conservancy and environment are two issues I'd rather not bend on.
Right.
But all the social stuff, I don't care anymore. I don't care who kisses who and who loves who, and that's all great. Everyone's entitled to happiness, and I won't get into the other one, but there's another social issue.
Sure.
I'm fine. If that's what you got to do, honey, that's what you got to do.
Right.
It's, but I pray for the future. I pray for our environment. Everybody says, oh, this administration's lifting the EPA guidelines and they're going to do this and blah, blah, blah. No, they're not going to just dump garbage into a stream. I think
they're they're just changing things for the better, really. They're just going to throw away the old because the old really wasn't that good. Everyone thought it was, but it's not. They're going to put it in the better circumstances.
And, they're gonna reroute stuff and there's a lot of stuff on paper that probably doesn't look that good anymore. And
you can put the word environment on something and everyone loves it, but you got to really read the fine print of what that
exactly,
because there also might be another hidden law bolted onto the back of that needs to get rid of, that we need to just scrap that policy and put into something that is just straight environment.
All way above my pay grade. But all I know is that the country economically is doing well. And
you got me talking about politics now. We never do that.
The 401ks for millions of people are killing it, and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess that's a positive thing. But, then again, there's an argument the other way, too, that a lot of it's not that great. And, I don't know. I'm just going to go fishing.
Yeah, see?
I'm just going to go fishing, man.
That's what it all comes back to, Rufus.
I'm going to launch the boat.
That's what we talked about before we even started the show, is the fact that I haven't really been fishing all that much this year, and that's my goal for next year.
I'm going to launch the boat, get my cast net out, get my sabiki rig out.
Sometimes that's all you can do.
Throw the dog on the boat and go chuck a net.
Yeah.
And go sit by a bridge or something, or by the inlet, and hopefully get a bite.
That's the life, man. That's the life. So I really, 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 really want to thank you for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
This has been phenomenal. I love you to death. I always have, and I always will.
Feelings mutual.
I feel like I listened to a podcast today. You made my job super easy today. This has been really
I got
wonderful.
a lot to say about a lot of stuff. And
I think you broke John's wrist over there. He's taking copious notes. And so we call John the Snook Master here. So
don't tell him that. You can't tell him.
Yes,
I'm nowhere near the Snook Master.
So while you got Rufus in the room, you want to ask him any questions here? You're sitting in the presence of greatness here. So
I can't think of anything right now. I'm just focused.
Yeah.
Well, when you guys want to, come on up, man. You got a weekend at the fish camp anytime you need it, and come on up. It's on me, and I'll take you fishing.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
Thank you. And bring the wife and the kids, and
absolutely
she can either hang out at the pool or go shopping or whatever.
Love it. Love it.
Dig it.
So let's see. Like my buddy Mike G always says, your ego is not your amigo. Right? Just always do your best, and then just let God do the rest. Remind you to always buy your vehicles at Joey Accardi, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Subaru, and no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we're always connected by water. Rufus Wakeman, I appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Rock and roll.
Yep.